Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going beyond the headlines, to see how Mexico is getting ready for potential changes in U.S. immigration policy with the newly elected President Trump. We've got some insightful news articles to guide us, and I think you'll find what Mexico is doing really fascinating. By the way, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Merida Magic YouTube channel for more insights into history, culture, and news in Merida, Mexico. Now, let's get started.
Yeah, it is a fascinating situation, and it all begins with a lot of uncertainty surrounding Trump's stated plans on immigration. He's talked about mass deportations and potential tariffs, which obviously have caused a lot of concern south of the border.
Okay, so we've got this backdrop of uncertainty and potential upheaval. What has been the response from Mexico? I know the articles mentioned Mexican President Sheinbaum.
Sheinbaum is in a tricky position. She's voiced opposition to mass deportations, but has been very measured in her criticism of Trump. It seems Mexico is prioritizing a functional relationship with the U.S. even as they prepare for these potentially disruptive policies.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how is Mexico getting ready? One of the articles mentioned this panic button app.
Yes. The app is designed for Mexican citizens facing imminent detention or deportation. It's meant to alert their nearest Mexican consulate and pre-selected family members.
So if you're in trouble, you hit this button and help is on the way. It almost sounds too good to be true.
Well, that's the thing. There's a lot of skepticism about how effective this app will really be, especially given past emergency response times in Mexico. Some people are even joking online asking, are Batman and Robin going to come to the rescue? It really underscores the public doubt about its usefulness.
It's interesting that they're putting resources towards this app, which seems like it might be more about optics than practicality. Are there other more concrete steps they're taking?
Definitely. Mexico is significantly bolstering its consular support and legal aid programs in the U.S. They're adding legal advisors to over 50 consulates, and we're talking over 300 advisors.
That sounds like a massive undertaking. What's the thinking behind that?
They're trying to provide more robust support to Mexican citizens navigating the complexities of the U.S. legal system. This includes getting support from consultants and law firms to help with deportation cases, which can drag on for months or even years.
I can see how having a lawyer would make a huge difference in those situations.
Absolutely. The articles point out that having legal representation significantly decreases your chances of being deported. However, many people can't afford legal fees. And unlike criminal cases, there are no court-appointed lawyers for immigration cases. It creates a real disadvantage.
That's a striking difference, it seems like, a system that's already stacked against those facing deportations. Is there anything else Mexico is doing to help families who might be impacted?
Yes. One area they're focusing on is families with U.S.-born children. There's a big push to encourage these families to register their children with Mexican consulates.
What's the purpose behind that? Is it to help prevent families from being separated?
Exactly. There's a very real fear that mass deportations could lead to families being torn apart, potentially even resulting in U.S. citizen children being removed from the country with their parents.
That's a truly frightening prospect for those families. And it makes you wonder if these measures, even with legal aid and family registration, will actually be enough to protect people in this climate of uncertainty.
That's the big question. It's clear Mexico is trying to prepare, but whether these efforts will be sufficient remains to be seen. What we're seeing is a nation bracing for impact, but the nature of that impact is still very much in flux.
It's almost like they're preparing for a hurricane that might hit, but might also veer off course at the last minute.
That's a great analogy. And, it makes me think about the historical context here. The relationship between the U.S. and Mexico, especially when it comes to immigration, has always been complex and fraught with tension.
It's true, and this isn't the first time the U.S. has threatened mass deportations. But the current political climate feels different, maybe even more volatile.
Absolutely. And I think that's why these preparations by the Mexican government are so significant. They show an awareness of just how much upheaval these policies could cause in the lives of millions of people.
Right. It's not just about individuals. We're talking families, communities, entire industries.
Yeah.
It's easy to get lost in the political debates, but the potential ripple effects of mass deportations are enormous.
Exactly. And it's easy to forget that behind the policies and the rhetoric, there are real people with real lives. This isn't just an abstract political issue. It's about the lives and livelihoods of countless individuals.
One thing that stood out to me in these articles was the skepticism surrounding the Mexican government's ability to actually protect its citizens in the U.S. It feels like there's this underlying question, are these measures really going to make a difference, or are they more for show?
That's a valid concern. There's a sense from some that the government might be focused on appearing proactive, perhaps to appease the public, or maintain a certain image on the world stage. But whether these efforts translate into tangible change remains to be seen.
And you have to consider the historical context. The Mexican government hasn't always had the best track record of supporting deportees once they return. Plus, there's a certain level of distrust, particularly among migrants, towards Mexican consulates.
Right. Some people view the consulates with suspicion, feeling like they're not treated with respect or that their concerns aren't taken seriously. So there are definitely questions about whether these efforts, even if well-intentioned, will actually be effective in safeguarding the rights and well-being of Mexican citizens in the U.S.
It's a complicated situation, and it's hard to predict how it will all play out. But there's one aspect I wanted to dig into a bit deeper, the issue of U.S.-born children. The articles mention encouraging families to register with consulates, but they don't really explore what happens to these children if their parents are deported.
That's a crucial point, and it goes to the heart of the family separation issue. Legally, U.S. citizen children can't be deported. However, if their parents are deported, these children face an impossible choice. Stay in the U.S. without their parents, or go to a country they may have never even known.
It's heartbreaking to think about these families being torn apart. What's supposed to happen in these cases? Is there any kind of system in place to protect these children?
Unfortunately, there's no easy answer. The reality is that the system isn't really equipped to handle these kinds of situations, and the potential for children to fall through the cracks is very real. This situation really underscores the human cost of these policies and how they can have devastating consequences that extend far beyond the individuals directly affected.
It's true. We're not just talking about numbers and policies. We're talking about real families, real children whose lives are being upended. And this whole situation raises broader questions about the relationship between the U.S. and Mexico. The articles touch on this tension, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the potential fallout.
Well, the fact that Mexico is actively preparing for potentially damaging actions from the U.S. government is in itself significant. It suggests a shift in the dynamics of their relationship. There's an element of distrust that's hard to ignore.
It's also that they're preparing for an attack from their closest ally. It's a delicate situation to navigate.
Exactly. Mexico relies heavily on its economic ties with the U.S., but it also has a responsibility to protect its own citizens and its own interests. This situation puts them in a very difficult position, having to balance those competing priorities. It could easily lead to friction and possibly even escalate into a diplomatic crisis.
It's hard to say for sure what will happen. There's so many factors at play, but it's clear that the stakes are high and the potential consequences are significant, not just for Mexico, but for the U.S. as well.
Absolutely. We can't forget that the U.S. also relies heavily on Mexico, both economically and in terms of cooperation on issues like border security and drug trafficking. Damaging that relationship could have far-reaching consequences for both countries.
It seems like we're potentially entering uncharted territory, in U.S.-Mexico relations. And it's easy to get caught up in the politics, but at the end of the day, this is about people's lives.
That's exactly right. These policies, these debates, they have real human consequences. We're talking about people's hopes, their dreams, their families. It's crucial to remember that
it feels like we're grappling with fundamental questions about who we are as nations and what we stand for. The idea of deporting millions of people, many of whom have built lives and contributed to our society. It forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about our values.
it does. It challenges us to examine our own biases, our own assumptions about immigration, and our own sense of responsibility towards those who are different from us.
This whole deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening. But I have to admit, I'm leaving with more questions than answers.
That's often the case when we delve into complex issues. But those questions are valuable. They push us to think critically, to challenge our own perspectives, and to seek a deeper understanding of the world around us.
So thinking about our listeners, what's the one thing you hope they take away from this conversation?
I think the most important takeaway is recognizing that this is a fluid situation with incredibly high stakes and a profound impact on human lives. Staying informed, engaging in thoughtful discussions, and advocating for policies that are both just and compassionate, these are all crucial steps we can take.
Well said. And on that note, I want to remind our listeners to like and subscribe to the Merida Magic YouTube channel for more insights into Mexico. We'll have more deep dives exploring all sorts of fascinating topics, so be sure to stay tuned. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.